You know, one thing I've not really seen being done since BO4 came out is any real comparison of the Aether and Chaos storylines. Not as in just talking about the stories themselves, but actual gameplay related stuff. Probably because everyone was too busy being emotionally crippled by the blood ending and going on a mass-scale journey of the 5 stages of grief. Thankfully, I think I am the first to have fully completed my journey through these grief stages, and I can finally start talking about the two separate storylines. So let's just start this off with the Chaos storyline, Treyarch's attempt at a brand new story. It follows the crew of Scarlet Rhodes, a masterful technician capable of creating many devices to aid her comrades, Bruno Delacreux, a French bruiser who will shoot first, ask questions never, Stanton Shaw, a British chemist, creator of the elixirs, and Diego Nicali, a smooth-talking Mexican, I think? I'm just trusting the wiki on this. I'm not very good with accents. The crew go on a journey to defeat a cult-like group with roots as far back as the gladiatorial era, while also searching for Scarlet's father, with the journey seeming to have more of a focus on historical locations, like the Titanic and the previously mentioned gladiatorial arena. So, with the introduction stuff out of the way, let's get to some of the positives. The obvious big positive of this brand new story is exactly that. It's a brand new story, where the only thing you have for story is a comic that's coming out and 2 maps, as opposed to the 20 or so maps, hundreds of radios and ciphers, a comic, and a literal spiraling poster of different timelines and dimensions with about 5 or so different versions of Rick Tuffin just running about the place they have to keep in mind, with cycles going on all over the place you'd get with the Aether storyline. As for the crew, I think they're great for the most part. Diego and Shaw are my personal favourites. Diego feels like he would be able to charm his way out of being caught holding a bloody knife over a dead body. He's really entertaining. And as for Shaw, for one thing, he's British. Probably shouldn't need more than that, but he's also just like a complete absolute fucking loon, making silly puns and just being an entertaining goof. Plus, something I haven't really seen with any crew so far, at least with Treyarch, is that each character actually has a proper purpose in the crew. What I mean is that each character specializes in something rather than simply being really good at killing zombies. Think about it, while each character in the Primus and Ultimus crew felt like their own developed character, they all kinda had the same abilities. They can kill zombies really well. Meanwhile, this Chaos crew, Scarlet's a tech girl, Diego's the charismatic charmer, Shaw's the chem guy, and Bruno's the big gruff bruiser guy. But of course, like I said, I think the crew is mostly great. I don't really care much for Bruno in both maps. I find him kinda uninteresting. He can be entertaining at bits, but he is the least interesting character in my opinion. And as for Scarlet, while I do like her in 9, in Voyage half her dialogue is effectively, I have daddy issues. But overall, I like the characters and the plot itself. The Chaos story does have me intrigued to see what happens next, especially after the very surprising ending to 9. Now as for the bit that most people might not really notice, the Chaos storyline gameplay stuff. Now, I will say that some of the things I mentioned right now that I feel are noticeable elements in both maps may wind up changing as more Chaos maps pop up. Same with the Aether story. Just making sure right now that I cover my ass if anything changes and someone watches this months or years down the line. Getting back on track, aside from the obvious aesthetic changes to the perks and the different special weapons, there are some things that are similar in both Chaos Story maps that are not shared by the Aether maps. Perks do not need the power to be activated in order to be used. In fact, while Voyage does have a sort of power equivalent that opens up half the map, 9 has no such thing. And as for the enemies, alongside the standard zombies, there are Catalyst zombies and Blightfathers, as well as the map-specific boss zombies. So, for example, 9, adding up all Catalyst and boss zombie variations, has 9 different enemy types, which is both fitting, considering the name, and sounds concerning. Thankfully, this is a case where the enemy variety isn't a mess, with all the enemies being completely balanced. Except for maybe the Thunder Catalyst. Well, it's easy to dodge, especially on 9. When he hits you, you are completely blinded for what feels like 3 seconds, so, wandering around just completely blind for a few seconds in a mode where you're supposed to have full focus on where everything is, that's fine. And of course, like I said earlier, the Chaos story has 4 unique special weapons. The Hammer of Valhalla, clearly a weapon based on the Norse mythology. The Scepter of Ra, continuing the theme of being based on the 4 mythologies. The perk machines represent, with this weapon being based on Egyptian mythology. And they kinda gave up with the chakrams and the dragon and viper weapons, cause I can't for the life of me figure out what any of those weapons have to do with Celtic and Greek mythology. Aside from the theming confusion, while most of the weapons are pretty good, aside from the scepter and solo, which is overall really weak, the hammer is the clear best weapon, dealing high damage with a high swing speed and a rather large swing arc that pretty much kills everything the moment you pull it out. One more thing is that all the Chaos storyline maps are brand new maps, which really may not sound like something worth mentioning, but still a point I wanted to mention. But that's about it for the Chaos storyline. A fresh new story with potential, interesting characters, and something specific to the Chaos map gameplay help it to feel unique in comparison to the Aether storyline. And speaking of the Aether storyline, it's time to talk about the Aether storyline. I had no segue for this. The Aether story focuses on the continuing story of the Primus and Ultimus crew, consisting of Richtofen, Dempsey, Takeo, and Nikolai, and Richtofen, Dempsey, Takeo, and Nikolai. Somebody starting on BF4 is going to be very confused about now. With the Primus crew, alternate events occurred in what happened in BO3 due to unseen forces, resulting in the crew beginning their journey to break the cycle they are trapped in. As for Ultimus, we witness an unseen chapter in the BO1 storyline, while also receiving a continuation of the events of Moon, possibly resulting in the combining of the Primus and Ultimus crews in preparation for the Great War. And I'm willing to say newcomers have absolutely no clue as to what I'm talking about. Now, let's just get this out of the way. I love the Aether story. I know I took the piss out of it when I mentioned it earlier, but I love it because of the gigantic plot. Plus, I've spent about 10 years of my life with it. That's one thing the Chaos storyline can't beat yet. Emotional investment. A lot of people, including myself, have spent 10 years getting invested with these characters and storyline. We truly care about this plot and, well, gonna get a bit spoilery here, so if you haven't finished Blood's Easter egg or seen the cutscene, then this is your moment to leave. So, just gonna ramble a bit until you do what you do, and leave or stay. So, this is all just padding so you can leave. We good? We good. Blood of the Dead's ending pretty much shook the zombies community for a while. It shows the death of Primus Richtofen, and it really is a powerful scene. But a part of how that cutscene was effective was the emotional connection everyone had to Richtofen, and just the Primus crew in general. We had known this new Richtofen since Origins came out over 5 years ago, and saw his character slowly evolve from Origins to Revelations, and to see his death come like that was tragic. People like Milo or JC were visibly crying after seeing it, with Milo especially spending a few minutes just sitting there in silence after seeing it. Now, of course, that cutscene could have been done better, kinda confused why everyone just sorta fucked off and let the man who had led them on his mad journey just bleed out his soul without even saying, "See ya, you silly wanker, hope you have fun bleeding out for all eternity." But it just still goes to show that a cutscene that isn't perfect still completely affected the community. Now, if the exact same kind of cutscene happened with the Chaos crew, it wouldn't be nearly as effective. Nobody would be brought to tears the same way with Richtofen's death, even if it had some improvements like the crew actually talking to the guy who was about to sacrifice himself. You really can't beat 10 years of emotional investment. But enough about all that. What makes the Aether storyline play different? Again, aside from the obvious aesthetic differences between the perk machines and the different special weapons, there are things that differ the Aether maps from the Chaos maps. The Aether maps follow a more traditional kind of zombies experience, with each of the maps requiring power switches to be turned on in order to activate perks and traps. And as for the enemies, it's much more simplistic in comparison to the Chaos storyline, with each map having only, 3 enemies overall. The standard zombie, of course, the map-specific boss zombie, classified having the Nova 6s and Blood having Brutus, and lastly, the fucking dogs. I never thought I would actually hate the dogs, but bloody hell did BO4 figure out a way to do it. It's not as bad post-patch, in fact now it's fine, but good lord did it feel like COD Ghost 2 dog warfare for a while. And lastly, the special weapons. They all actually stick to a theme of each weapon being tied to a character rather than the Chaos story giving up about halfway through its god theming. A minigun for Dempsey, a flamethrower for Nikolai, Ragnarok for Richtofen, and a katana for Takeo. The weapons are all good, but the katana is a clear best weapon, pretty much for the same reason I like the hammer. But that's pretty much it for the Aether storyline. Which leaves us with one question. Which storyline is better? Well, it depends. The fact that the Chaos storyline is completely fresh and new with good characters and intriguing plot might mean it's best for newcomers, but I also can't deny the fact I've been invested in the Aether storyline for 10 years, spent so long with these characters and the plot, that I can't help but say I prefer the Aether storyline. But also, while I do prefer the Aether storyline, I also can't deny that I have the clue how it would be like for newcomers. Not that it isn't a good plot, I mean I love it because of how good a plot it is, especially with the character growth we see in Bill 3, but like I said earlier, there is so much lore to get into that it could be impenetrable to newcomers, unless they are willing to spend like hours catching up on all the characters' locations, important events, and so on. So the best way I can describe it is, longtime fans will prefer the Aether storyline without a doubt, while newcomers will probably prefer the new Chaos storyline because of its ease of access. None of this is counting gameplay differences, I just brought it up because I thought it would be interesting to notice the differences between the two map sets as of right now. And yeah, that's about it. And would you look at that, I accidentally did a 10-minute. Well, would you look at that?